Certainly more for us to work with when we're planning the rollout of this important inquiry report. Our last speaker for today is Dr. Lachlan Clohesy, and Lachlan is from Canberra, NTEU, and we're very happy to have him here today. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And there's just some slides coming up, but I'll start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. I'm not from interstate, so I've got no excuse. I need to know the country we're on, obviously. And I'd also like to extend my appreciation for Terry Mason, who was a former chair of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Policy Committee in the NTU, and wrote the chapter on First Nations issues in the IPAN report. So I think it's worth acknowledging Terry as well. So I thought my comrades here would cover organising in unions, and they haven't let me down. So I'm going to take a slightly different tack. I'm here in a long line of academics that are speaking out for peace and against war, and particularly against the use of nuclear technology for military purposes. So my academic field's political history, and in that role I've researched meetings of university staff through the 1940s who were part of the broader Australian Association of Scientific Workers. And they understood that science doesn't occur in a vacuum, and society is shaped and ought to be shaped by science. Accompanying this view, they had a really strong sense in the social responsibility of science. So I'm going to draw your attention quickly to three very different scientists from this time. So firstly, we've got Sir Ernest Titterton. He's a lifelong proponent of Australia getting the bomb. And you can see here his enthusiastic sort of support. We can now determine what might crudely be called the cost of killing by such weapons. Assuming they were used against built-up areas, Japanese experience shows that a 20 kiloton bomb will kill 50,000 people and injure a like number. That is, killing is affected at roughly 2 pounds per head, man, woman and child, a figure which we should compare with the cost of killing in the last war, which was as high as several thousand pounds per head. So go nuclear bombs, much cheaper to kill people. Very different scientists next, so not at all the same as Ernest Titterton. This is Sir David Rivett. People in Canberra will know there's a suburb named after him. Head of the CSIR, as it was then, now CSIRO, who endured McCarthyist smears about communist influence there and held these sorts of views on science. If I'm not mistaken, there is a fight ahead in Australia, and not only in Australia, to keep science as the pioneer, the discoverer, the leader, and not just the patronised servant called in at times of distress and low dividends to act as the clever artisan to keep the ship of industry in motion or to keep the dogs of war supplied. So a very different view of science there. And again, if we go to the next one, Sir Mark Oliphant. Many of you would have heard of Sir Mark Oliphant. I mean, some of you may have known him. So this is, I haven't got a long quote from him, but this is from his obituary in Nature. Oliphant was vehemently opposed to the use of the atom bomb on Japanese cities. He never overcame his feelings of guilt about his part in the Manhattan Project, and he frequently expressed his views to the Australian media. He also took an active part in international campaigns against nuclear weapons, particularly in the Pugwash conferences on science and world affairs. One of the 22 participants in the first conference in 1957, he fully shared the Pugwash precept that scientists have a moral duty to be concerned about the social impact of their work. Describing himself as a belligerent pacifist, he advocated his conviction that war itself is evil and must not be tolerated by humanity. So if we go to the summary, in summary, we've got Titterton, the pro-nuclear weapons scientist, Rivett, who saw science as the discoverer, not the servant of the military-industrial complex, and Oliphant, who went even further and was explicitly pro-peace and against the military application of nuclear technology. So let me introduce you to another scientist. This is the ANU Vice-Chancellor, Professor Brian Schmidt, who has enthusiastically embraced the ANU's role in our new nuclear submarine industry. And this is these are quotes from earlier this month. I think this is actually at the National Press Club. So these are parts of a speech. As the Defence Minister said here yesterday, AUKUS will demand a transformation in Australia's cultural relationship with science and technology. Our AUKUS partners expect Australia to pull its own weight and develop sovereign capability to operate and maintain the fleet. This will require the integration of military, industry, government and academia to create an entirely new sector of the economy. As Vice Admiral Mead noted recently in The Australian, starting today, we need to set a 14-year-old schoolgirl on a path to be captain of Australia's first nuclear-powered submarine. We cannot afford to drag our feet on this. Australia needs these new submarines and we need them in service as soon as possible. So I'm running out of time, so I'll leave you to figure out where Brian Schmidt sits among those other scientists I've mentioned. But how do we fix this? As many on this panel would know, people here obviously, and it's been mentioned, we're not free to take protected industrial action in support of our social, employment and economic interests as much as we'd like to be. We're going to need to be creative, innovative and do something which attracts attention and builds public pressure. As Mary said earlier, we can't just speak to those who are already converted, we need to speak to those who we need to convince. So we need to do this by making campaigns interesting for people not already interested and to educate people on why these sorts of issues are important. So here's my modest proposal. A high-profile public campaign to rename the Oliphant building at ANU. So that's the building where the Research School of Physics and Engineering is. Now look, it's pretty clear now that Oliphant's peacenik views are completely out of step with the modern ANU and its mission. It's not the role of the Academy to consider the social responsibility of science, no. It is the role of the Academy to back in the military application of nuclear technology and to support our government's overseas military adventures. So rename the building. Who better to embody this robust new attitude than Iron Man himself, Tony Stark? We're going to rename the Oliphant building at ANU the Tony Stark building at ANU. And we can do this with, you know, big petitions, big public campaigns that'll grab attention, and then people ask why we're doing this. We get to explain why we're doing this, because ANU's vision now is completely out of step with those pioneers of physics and engineering at ANU who are completely against the military application of nuclear technology. Now, obviously, this is heavy on satire and it's a cheeky example, but it shows what could be done to bring views like those of Mark Oliphant to a wider audience and to demonstrate how far Brian Schmidt's vision for the ANU has strayed. I'll end there and look forward to the discussion. Thanks very much.